I'm
sorry, a couple minutes late.
and you are on with Matthew from Music City Drive-In. I'm going to shut up, let you have a great interview. Matt, just a reminder, cloud chat window open for last.
Sounds good.
Hi, Matthew.
Good morning. How are you guys today?
Excellent. Sorry to leave you hanging there for, was it 2 minutes? Yeah. I'm
that's no problem.
more precise than that. Yeah.
I'm the late one.
Well, I'm very
I crashed. I snuck past.
Just because you're the director, writer, producer doesn't mean you got to be in this frame.
I snuck past security.
Okay.
We're in his office at the American Museum of Natural History.
Yeah. And where are you?
It's a cool background. I am in my home office where I do some podcasts and stuff. So my cinema.
No, where on earth are you?
Colorado Springs.
Nice.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, you know anti-vaxxers.
No.
Yes.
Sorry. Go ahead.
So I'm really excited to talk to you guys about Shot in the Arm, which is opening in New York this weekend. Really enjoyed the film, which takes a look at kind of the debate about vaccines, I guess is how we will friendly put it. Yeah. Scott, I know you started working on this, looking at the measles outbreak. What kind of drew you to this story?
Yeah, it was the fact that in 2019, a year before any of us were saying COVID-19 and all these other things and lockdown, and there were pockets of measles outbreaks, state of emergency in New York City, state of emergency in Washington State, outbreaks all across Europe. And I wanted to know why. Why is this happening? And I did my...
Wasn't there an outbreak in Disneyland too?
That was a couple years earlier.
Even earlier?
Yeah,
oh,
okay.
That
was 16.
Oh, okay.
16. That was the start of it. And that actually led to Richard Pan getting the removing the exemption laws in California that they had a tizzy about. But back to 2019. So I'm sorry, that was percolating. I didn't know about that. Yeah. So that was percolating there, the 16, and now it was getting worse. And I did my lazy Google search and saw that in 2000, we had almost eliminated measles from the United States, like gone. And why is this coming back 19 years later?
In the thousands. Thousands of cases.
It was almost eliminated. We'd stayed that course, and we'd stayed that at that level of vaccine acceptance, use of the MMR, we would have eliminated it. So I reached out to the wonderful Dr. Paul Offit out of Philadelphia, out of CHOP, Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, because I'd seen him on a podcast.
They call that CHOP?
Yeah,
I like that. I like that.
And he was on a podcast, and on the podcast, there were antis banging on the windows like this, doing the podcast, and there were antis banging on the window trying to get him to stop talking. I was like, and he handled it so well. And he was very generous with his time. And I asked him, what's going on? Why is this happening? And he said, well, Scott, it's very simple. There are people out there that are disinformation merchants and spreading misinformation and scaring parents about the MMR vaccine to get them to stop vaccinating their kids. Vaccine rates come down, measles happens. It's not complicated. And so I started this journey with him, and he introduced me to people like Dr. Tony Fauci before he became Super Fauci, and Dr. Peter Hotez. And but I didn't only want to film with the pro-science side, the public health side. I wanted to film with these people that are fomenting this misinformation, disinformation, and fear. So I filmed with OG Andrew Wakefield, who had the OG study that was retracted and fraudulent. He got his license taken away, but it started the fear around MMR and the possible connection and false connection to autism. Del Bigtree, one of the biggest names and entertainers on the interwebs about these things. Dr. Tyson was kind enough to go on his show. We'll talk about that in a minute. And
no, we're not.
We're not. We're not. Yeah. We've given him
that was a fun experience for you.
Yeah, and then the top of the pyramid currently in the anti-vax world is Robert Kennedy Jr., who did give us an interview, and quite a revealing interview that I can't wait for your audiences to see.
Yeah, it was definitely quite fascinating.
Sorry, and then COVID happened. Sorry, I left that off.
Right,
and then COVID happened. There was that. So we thought we had a pretty darn good movie in 2019 with all those elements. And then COVID happened, and it went to this whole other level. And we were forced hand of being in lockdown. What are we going to do with that? Started interviewing, obviously, from lockdown, and decided to include my family in it as just a humble sort of all of us right? And my wife is a teacher in Compton, so she had that homeschooling element, and just try to keep just a little bit of my family in, as much to kind of just
Zoom schooling.
Zoom schooling to get a
Mhm.
sense of that all of us, and thankfully the response has been very positive.
For everyone who's taken the time to look at the film.
Yeah.
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 So
Neil, what drew you to want to be involved in this project?
So it's not so much that I wanted to be involved. I'd rather just stay on the beach.
Peach. Hilarious. Like you have downtime.
Well, that's where
It's-
he thinks about the cosmos.
See,
Well done.
see, he gets me.
My
Okay,
bad, my bad.
you don't
Well-
get me.
Well played.
He gets me.
I'll be over here.
Okay. So there comes a time where I have to recognize that if I have certain abilities, certain a capacity to help others
Mm,
in their task, that I would be irresponsible if I did not.
I love it.
So Scott calls me up and says, Neil, I've got this, here's a 2-hour edit of this documentary I'm working on vaccine hesitancy, whose roots, by the way, are in anti-science thinking. And a big part of where I go in my public platforms is trying to get people to think straight and to use science to inform decisions that will matter to their lives, the lives of their loved ones, and civilization itself. And there's no end of that. There's like climate change, and I mean, so
Anti-GMO. We met actually on an anti-GMO, a movie resetting the conversation on GMOs that he was kind enough to narrate, and we became friends. And he didn't block my number, so sorry about that.
yeah, so he came back. Damn. Okay, so I offered him comments, and he welcomed them, absorbed most of them even, and others there was some pushback, but it was very healthy, creative pushback. And then he invited me to be script consultant in that capacity, and then realized I also had platform that could assist the visibility of the film, and to the extent that he engages me in that way, just to help turn the film into a thing that people will know is there.
Yes.
I then became executive producer,
Yeah.
and typically the role of the executive producer is all the things that somebody's got to do to get a film noticed and reacted to, and all the rest of this. Because as the filmmaker, he doesn't always have that access.
Right.
He doesn't always, or even the knowledge of how to get people to realize that what he's done might be important. So I said, no, of course I don't have medical expertise, but that's not necessary when everyone he interviews in the film does. All right. So I'm there to help shape the messaging of the science as it's folded into the storytelling arc that he conceived.
And in a way, you got to see, it was there in that 2-hour cut, but in a way you got to see it, and we collaborated on watching it go from being a measles and anti-vaxxer movie and science denial and all disinformation to really a movie about our social contract and what does it mean to be a citizen of this planet, to think beyond the end of your nose about your effect on your community and the world.
That's a good point, because it wasn't necessarily there at the time. It was just, these are the ignorant anti-vaxxers, and here's the angels who are trying to say, and all right, that's a kind of a documentary, right? But it turned into something different. It turned into something better. And I would say this,
bigger,
even if I were not part of it, it turned into an exploration of the human condition and the relationship between humans in the survival of civilization. And I don't think I'm overstating it.
No.
Well, you saw the film. I mean, so I don't have to put thoughts in your head, but the takeaway is not so much, oh, they're science. It's, yes, that's in there, but the takeaway is, my gosh, there are people just trying to do right by the world, and that they might not be as charismatic as those who have access to false information, and they are a very visible face. Whereas peer-reviewed science journals uttered by institutions does not have the draw or the charisma that the one person who's telling you, I'm your advocate, and you are David and they are Goliath, because no one has ever cheered for Goliath. So
I don't know.
Does that make sense?
Patriots fans. Might be that group.
Good one.
Nice one.
So, you touched on something. The vaccine part is very interesting, but what struck me is kind of looking at it as it's become a little bit of a war on science and a war on truth.
Mm-hmm.
How do we combat that?
Great question. I don't mean to flip it this early in our conversation, but do you have any?
Yeah, I was going to do the same thing.
We're trying our best, but I would love if the film inspired any thoughts. Do you have literally any thoughts? Your neighbor, the world that you think we can use?
Yeah, it was an interesting discussion for my wife and I, because she has talked about the same thing about doing research. I was very fascinated. One of your interview subjects is a lady who's a nurse who ended up becoming a nurse and in New York during COVID. And I like how it starts out. She talks about her own post about being vaccine hesitant because of things she had heard, and doing the research and going through. I just unfortunately don't think people want to put in the time to look a lot of stuff up.
Or the humility, Matthew. I'm so glad you're pointing out Blima Marcus's story, because I found her through the story of 2019, the terrible measles outbreak, state of emergency in New York City, in the Orthodox Jewish community, which is tiny subtext of that. The anti-vaxxers are frustrating on a lot of levels. They're dangerous on a lot of levels, but they are talented. These communicators are very talented and ruthless. So they penetrated the Orthodox Jewish community because it was a closed community, but they figured out a way to get in there. And literally we said it, disinformation is its own disease, spread that disease there. So Blima was already an interesting enough and wonderful nurse and character in the film as this nurse defending science in her community. But her backstory was even more interesting, because her chiropractor, which I hope she doesn't see anymore, recommended a book to her when she first got pregnant, and it was a complete anti-vax book, scared the crap out of her. And
by the way, the title was not anti-vaxxers. What you should know, what you need to know about vaccines.
It was a little nastier than that.
No, you think so?
Yeah, it was vaccine. It was a little scarier.
No, I
think that was the pamphlet in the movie, was something about what you need to know
that's
about
the one that
vaccines.
penetrated. That's the peach. That was the pamphlet that penetrated the Orthodox Jewish community. They made it look like it was a science pamphlet. They tried to make it look like science, but it was terrifying. It was just like, vaccines will kill you and all this. Thankfully, and this is such an important part of the story, Blima had the humility and the desire to want to know a larger picture. She went to nursing school and she became a nurse, and she completely changed her mind because she had the evidence to change her mind. So it's amazing story.
By the way, there's a more subtle thing going on here, which maybe it's subtle yet pernicious. The idea that, well, let me do my own research.
Oh, terrible.
Okay. And then someone spends 2 hours on Google typing in, are vaccines bad for you? And it takes them to all the sites that say vaccines are bad for you. And this counts as research that they're doing. When
confirmation bias machine.
Yeah. The algorithms on the internet are not there for you to see the full story. They're there it's a business model, and they're there to feed what you will then want more of, further bricking yourself into this silo, not even knowing what else is out there. And they'll say, I did my own research and I'm not going to take it out. All right. So whereas what she did, she not only did her own research, she became a nurse. Yeah. Okay. She professionally studied it. She
had teachers and advisors check her.
Yes. Okay. Yes. So that's another. So this is the Dunning-Kruger effect, where you do a little bit of work and you think you know a lot, but you don't really know enough to realize that you're wrong.
Right.
And it's a fascinating space to be in intellectually, where you have this much access to information. So on top of that, then there's, like I said, the faceless institutions, big pharma, big business, big government telling you things. And then you say, well, who is that? I don't know. Without realizing that's how science works. Science doesn't work by the charisma of one person. All right. It's not somebody gets a result.
Scientist?
Right, exactly.
Sexiest scientist?
They get a result and other scientists check that result. Ideally, your competitors in this field, they check the result. And this continues until it arrives at a place where there's repeatable consistency in the experiment. Then that gets reported either in a journal or it's some spokesperson for the thing. All right, so now watch. You then comb the internet and you find a person who has the right pedigree. Oh, I work for Harvard Hospital, or
it pops up on your YouTube page and says, but
okay,
they won't tell you.
What they won't tell you, what they're suppressing, I have the actual truth and I'm an MD, and they don't know. Well, that's where your flag should go up. Because in science, the consensus is everything. It's the only thing that has currency.
Yeah.
And the consensus, not of opinions, but a consensus of experimental verification. And that you don't see, these are faceless results. And so I see and understand how you can be swayed by one of your own human beings saying, I'm your advocate and I'm going to protect you against Goliath.
You've said it. It's irresistible.
Irresistible.
Almost irresistible as clickbait. To say,
irresistible.
I know the. Oh, I forgot my comb. It's almost irresistible as clickbait to say, oh my God, because we all want to know that person, right? And they take advantage of the David and Goliath. They take advantage of the Watergate, the Woodward and Bernstein, that sometimes David is remarkable, right? That those two Davids did take on this huge institution. They want to be that. And they say, if they just say that's another big institution that we're taking down, a lot of people just go, oh, then they must be right. And it's a shame. And just to make sure that we're getting all the beautiful nuance, the internet, while it has those algorithms, is also a miracle. It's incredible.
No, it's just science. It's not a miracle. Just
damn it.
Make that clear.
Okay. He doesn't like
just because you don't understand it doesn't make
a lot of fun at parties.
Doesn't make it a miracle. Okay.
So much.
I'm just saying.
It's true. It's true.
Okay.
It's remarkable.
Sure.
There we go. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank you guys both for sharing a little bit of your inspiration and the process of going in here. Shot in the Arm opened in New York today, coming to LA soon. I hope everybody gets a chance to see it. Really enjoyed it. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for telling the story.
Excellent.
Appreciate you. Thanks for sharing.
All right.
Thank you.